we'll get started. So our first presenter in this block, session 4, is Chris Cook. He is a junior at Eastern Washington University, and as you can see, the title of his presentation is On the Question of Being.
All right, well, as you've just heard, I am Chris Cook. I'm going to be giving you a presentation on being. Now, for those of you who aren't philosophy majors, being is a highly ambiguous term, and it's usually used to designate that which makes something what it is. You know, what makes a chair, what makes you recognize a human as a human no matter what. And this is sort of basically one of the main foundations of a metaphysical interpretation of the world. It's sort of the before the physical, what you can do to recognize something for what it is. This is actually the entire study of ontology, one of the main branches of metaphysics. Ontology focuses itself entirely on questions of being itself. Now, I'm going to be demonstrating today that being is nonsense. And this is nonsense in the sense of the term that it has no meaning and can tell us nothing about the world. And the 3 ways I'm going to do this is, first, I will show you that it is a nonsensical term. Second, I'm going to show you that propositions that say anything about being are simply nonsense. And finally, I'm going to, in the tradition of Gottlob Frege, tell you why this term violates the distinction between a concept and an object, of which the first 2, by the way, are arguments from that fellow, Undergraducate Wittgensteinian. Very interesting guy. Okay, now this begins by an understanding of ordinary language. Language can be best subdivided into 3 sorts of language. You are going to have ordinary, which is what we speak just generally to each other, what we're speaking right now. Specialized languages, which are things such as what the sciences use. Now these are rule-stating languages, ones that tell you, like, in a given certain, in most situations, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. That is a rule that specialized language will give you. Finally, there's philosophical language. Now, ordinary language is sort of just the way we are speaking right now. And through that, ordinary words get their meaning in a public setting, through our interactions with each other. In other words, something like, say, we all know that that is a chair. We don't have a private meaning of chair, we have a public meaning that that is certainly a chair. Further, this makes us understand that this is a meaning as the way we use the term. It does not gain its sort of meaning through a metaphysical use. Now, philosophical language can be best characterized as a misuse of ordinary language through, say, being. This is mostly done through the nominalizing of the verbs. In other words, being. It can be nominalized into the abstract noun form, which is when you say something along the lines of, at the very core of my being I believe this, or this violates my fundamental beliefs at the core of my being. Now, philosophers will take this abstract noun form, and it will be considered to be a thing itself, as in the thing that makes us all who we are, the fundamental characteristic of what everybody is. Now, this is treating all words as names. Now, when you end up doing something like this, from the time of Plato onwards, we might be able to say Anaximander did that or something like that, but most of our evidence originally stems from Platonic uses. Now, Plato began by taking the verb form, and he began by the sort of forms creation. He created forms to explain the fundamental being of all things. We know that's a chair because all chairs represent that in the ultimate form of chair. Now, this leads us to the problem of predication and the reasons why not all words can be names. As highlighted by Donald Davidson, the problem of predication would be that if you're treating all words as names, you're creating lists. You're creating a list of names. Now you need something to characterize the difference between them. The way most philosophers do this is through through particular and universal names. A particular name would be a proper name, a universal name would be something like being, something that is universally a name for many things. Now the problem of predication comes from something along the lines of saying, Bill is sitting. Now if you take the statement, Bill is sitting, Bill is obviously a proper name. Sitting is obviously a general name. Now, this means that Bill possesses sitting. This is an identity statement here. Bill is sitting is the same thing as Bill possesses sitting. But then you run into the problem, well, possesses is also a name thing. So Bill possesses sitting. And further, Bill possesses sitting. This regress would make language absolutely incomprehensible because it would end up in this constant infinite regress. Now, obviously our language is working. You understand what I'm saying, or at the very least you understand the words coming out of my mouth. And I would understand what you were saying back. Thus, we have to understand that there must be different parts of language. You must have verbs, nouns, names, things like this. Now this leads us to being meaningless. Now, because it is not the name of an abstract object, you are thus turning it into something it is not. By taking being, which is either a verb or an abstract noun that we use for idiomatic uses, you end up then creating something new that does not exist before. It becomes nonsense, it's meaningless. And anything that you use in an improper way is meaningless. If I were to say, if you were to treat, say, running in the same way, running is part of me, I possess running, does not make sense. To us, that doesn't even present any sort of image that works. Thus, when you end up using words improperly like that, you end up creating that sort of problem. Now then, the next thing we're going to look at are the propositional uses. Now, these propositions we're going to look at ordinary, or as I call them here, empirical propositions, compared with metaphysical propositions. Now, this analysis only works in propositions in the indicative mood or the assertive mood, when you're trying to assert a fact about something. Now, an empirical proposition, it can be true or false based on the state of affairs of the world. Such as if you say, Obama lives in the White House, say. Now, we can say this is true or false based on whether it is actually a fact of the world or not. Now, obviously right now it is true, Obama lives in the White House. But it would still make sense to say Obama does not live in the White House. That's obviously a contradiction of what I said before, Obama lives in the White House. In other words, we can actually assert whether this is true or false based on whether it is true of the world and if there's a contradictory that still makes sense. Now, metaphysical propositions this doesn't work for. If you say something like, being is inherent to all things, this requires that the word being means, is something that is inherent to all things. That's part of its definition. So if you say being is not inherent to all things, you are not creating a contradictory. You have created a whole new definition for being. Now, without a contradictory, that makes that proposition necessarily true, that being is inherent to all things. But on the converse, it is also necessarily true based on a different use of being, that it is not inherent to all things. Now, you have no way of actually looking at the state of the affairs of the world and actually saying that this is not true or this is true. So what we end up here is that we understand that metaphysical works are nonsense. Now, I put up a book here. I like to call this Being in Time by Martin Heidegger. That certainly creates the... it ends up saying nothing about the world. If you don't have a truth value, say, or if you don't are able to say this is true or false, you have said nothing about the world. You have also not shown anything about the world. If you cannot say something about the world, if you cannot show something about the world, it is simply nonsense that makes no sense whatsoever to speak about. Now, this makes being a term where if you say being is inherent to all things, you're saying something nonsensical. It's neither true nor false. It's just a statement that makes no sense. Finally, we get to Gottlob Frege on concept and object. Now, Frege made this distinction that's actually somewhat confusing, but as I think he put it best when he said, the concept, as I understand the word, is predicative. On the other hand, a name of an object, a proper name, is quite incapable of being used as a grammatical predicate. In other words, an object, it goes in the wrong order, is the name as the proper name of a thing. It is something to be predicated about. The concept is that which predicates about a name. Thus, take the statement, Cassie is short. This would require that you have a proper name, Cassie, the object, and the concept is short. Now, is short is not something that you can predicate about. Shortness is a relative phrase that is not a name. Cassie is obviously something you can't predicate. Obviously, you can't say, short is Cassie. Well, you can, it's just funny sounding. Now, I'm going to first of all, of course, thank Martin Heidegger for giving me these, who disapproves greatly. From his quote, I can show you that being is an object when he says, I apologize, I'm going to mispronounce this, it's been a while since I took German. Dasein, or Dasein, is an entity whose being has the determinate character of existence. And then he also says, however, which will show this to be a concept, something that it cannot be if it is a name, is that he's talking about a part of it here. Being in the world is care. Now he's making an identity statement here. He has identified that being in the world is the same thing as care. But care is not a proper name. Care is a concept, something that can predicate about a name. Now these are mutually exclusive because you cannot have something that is a name that predicates about something, and you can have a predicate that is a name. As such, you end up creating a misuse of the term here, which ends up being to the conclusion that being is nonsense. It is the equivalent of the Jabberwocky. It is just a bunch of nonsensical statements that you cannot string together. It has been shown that being is a nonsensical word. The word has no meaning in and of itself. It is not something that makes sense when we speak of it. It has been shown that a statement that involves being is nonsensical also. The statement says nothing about the world. It cannot create a picture of the world. It does not exist as something that says or shows anything. And we've shown that if you actually use it as a name, you have created a problem by conflating it as both a concept and an object. This simply shows that being has, throughout its entire usage, been a misuse of language. And I'm going to leave it at that because I like to have extra discussion time. So thank you, and questions.